All right. Welcome back, Summer Undergraduate Research Program students. This is our workshop titled Applying to a Ph.D. And we are lucky enough to have today with us one of the student affairs officers from the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department here at Samuel Engineering, Mr. Julio Vega. He is the SAO, Student Affairs Officer, who's in charge of supporting the entire graduate admissions process for the School of Engineering, Electrical Computer Engineering Department. And this is our agenda for today. We're going to start with introductions, disclaimers. So I'll let Julio introduce himself a little further. Then we'll cover the logistics of the application process. Then we'll cover the application components, the factors that impact decisions in the Electrical Computer Engineering Department. And then we'll close up with do's and don'ts, how to contact faculty, tips on contacting graduate students, and then we'll close with FAQs. And of course, there's always an opportunity to ask questions, so feel free to use the chat to type out any questions or to raise your hand, and we can call on you to ask questions throughout Julio's presentation. So again, this is Julio Vega. I'm going to go ahead and ask him to unmute his mic and introduce himself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Hi, my name is Julio Vega. I'm the Student Affairs Officer for the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. I'm the admissions coordinator, and I handle everything in our department for admissions questions, the applications. I prepare the applications for our faculty for them to review. And once they make their decisions, I send out the acceptance letters, and all that information up until students arrive on campus. So I'm the main point, the main contact for admissions in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. Our vice chair right now, which is Professor Mona Jarahi, who's transitioning out, and then we're going to have Professor Vandenberg, who will be taking over the position. The vice chair is the professor in our department that finalizes all the admission decisions in our department. So the information that I'm going to present corresponds to just the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. If you're interested in applying to other departments at campus, like computer science, mechanical, you will have to contact each department directly and find out their requirements, because something you will learn is that at the graduate level, all departments are their own entity. We're individual departments, unlike what you see at the undergraduate level, like your guys' major right now, which is all centralized in one office, and then you can easily switch majors from like electrical to computer or to mechanical. At the graduate level, it's separate. It's different. We each have our own departments. We are our own departments, and we have our own requirements for admission.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be able to switch, back and forth.
Julio, thank you so much. Sorry, I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And I think, from my perspective to students, I fully expect and realize that all of you will likely, if you choose to apply to grad school, you will be applying to multiple schools, not just Samuel Engineering, Electrical Computer Engineering Department. So for the sake of this workshop, we're clearly focusing in on one department, and Julio is gracious enough to give us his time to explain thoroughly the process for applying to this specific department at this specific school. But to Julio's point, my advice to students is to, once you decide which schools and which departments you'll be applying to, it is critical for you to contact those departments separately. And even within, like Julio said, even within our one school, the Samuel School of Engineering, different departments have different procedures, different protocols, and different processes. So thank you, Julio, for covering that. And again, I want to recommend to students that once they decide which school, which university, which department, you need to really contact those departments individually so you fully, thoroughly understand how they do their admissions process. So thanks, Julio, for letting me chime in there.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you click so that the whole slide shows?
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so a little bit of like overview of our program. So we offer 2 degrees, a master's and a PhD. For students applying for a master's program, we don't offer financial support. This is due to the fact that we have a lot of students applying, and we admit a lot of students, so we are unable to fund students for the MS program. However, students who apply to our PhD program and are admitted into our PhD program, the students are fully funded by our department and our faculty. The good thing about our program is that you don't have to have a master's degree to apply to the PhD program. You can apply directly with just your bachelor's. And students who are not admitted into the PhD program are also automatically considered for our MS program as long as you don't already have a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering or a related field. Our application becomes available in September after Labor Day, and it is due on December 15th. We admit for students for fall quarter of every year only. We don't admit for winter or spring quarter. In rare cases, we admit PhD students who already have a master's degree for off-cycle quarters like winter and spring, because these students usually just start research. But for students who want to do our master's program, you have to wait until the fall. You apply for fall, so no winter and spring admissions. And then the way it works is that you apply to UCLA, to the graduate division, and our department makes recommendations. So ultimately, the UCLA graduate division has the final say who gets admitted and who doesn't. But our recommendations are students who obviously meet the requirements for admission. Okay, and then this next slide, I will go over an overview of our requirements for admission. Can you click so you can see the entire slide, please? Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so yeah. So our requirements for admission. So the requirements for the MS program and the PhD program are pretty much the same documents that you have to submit in the application. There's only a slight difference. So in order to be eligible for admission, you have to have a 3.0 GPA minimum and a bachelor's degree in electrical and computer engineering or a related field. So 3.0 is the minimum to be eligible for admission into UCLA. However, students who are more competitive are going to have a higher GPA. So our average is around a 3.6, 3.7 for our MS students, for our admits overall. So you do want to have GPA that is higher than a 3.0. Note, if you are applying for our PhD program, PhD applicants have to have a 3.5 GPA in both their undergraduate degrees and MS if you have an MS. Next requirement, GRE score. So due to the challenges that are brought upon due to the COVID-19, we're not requiring GREs this year. So that's a good thing that, it saves money and time for the students. But typically we require GRE scores. And for the GRE, we don't have a minimum or required score. We advise our students to look at the statistics that we have on our website. We have the averages from our past admits, and we tell students to look at those scores, and that's the kind of score you want to aim for. Like I said, this year we won't be requiring the GRE because of COVID-19, because I guess it's difficult to take the exam. But this is for This is for this year only. We're still not sure how it's going to play out for fall 2022 and so on. The next requirement, the next 3 letters of recommendation. Our faculty want at least 2 academic references, and the 3rd letter can be a professional reference. So let's say if you don't have enough academic references, it's okay if you submit 2 professional references, but it's strongly recommended that the majority of your letters are from academic references, because your professors, anyone that you work with in the academic setting, will be able to speak about you and how what kind of work you can do in the academic setting. TOEFL scores. This is a requirement that's only for international students. So if you guys are obtaining your degree from a school in the U.S. or an Anglophone country, you don't have to submit TOEFL scores. A resume or curriculum vitae with all your experience, a statement of purpose, and the online application. And all this information is you will input in your online application and submit it. This is just a quick overview. If you want to see all the requirements in detail, you just go to our website, which is listed at the bottom, www.ee.ucla.edu. We'll be updating information as things change, whether we change the deadline, or, like, for instance, the stuff about the GRE score, that's going to be updated on our website. So just check if you have questions. If you forget, just go to our website. Okay, yeah, just the timeline. So like I said, the application becomes available in September, and it's due December 15th. After that, students have until January 1st to submit test scores and letters of recommendation. In this case, you don't have to worry about submitting test scores, your GRE scores, because we won't be requiring them this year, but your letters of recommendation have to be in by January 1st. After that, our faculty start reviewing applications in January. We have an admissions meeting where the faculty meet and make decisions for the master's students. And for the PhD students, each faculty will review the applications in their area, and they will make individual recommendations. And this happens in January, and we usually start releasing admission decisions starting in February, and they go all the way through March. After that, a student gets an offer, and students have until April 15th to let us know if they will be accepting our offer or not. This is important because students who are offered funding are PhD students. If you don't notify the school, if you don't notify us that you want to accept the offer and it's past the deadline, then you lose your offer of the funding.
I want to actually pause here. I think this is a good time to pause before we get into the application details. Students, do any of you have any questions? You can either unmute your mic, or you can raise your hand, or you can type your question in the chat. Okay.
I have a quick question about letter of recommendations.
Okay.
For academic letters, is it okay if we get like a PhD student that we work with to write the letter instead of like the faculty? Because the PhD student would know us better or know how we work better.
Yeah, that's fine. For our department, it's fine. Yeah, you want someone that can really speak on your, on your performance, so that's fine. And the student is someone who will be, who's obtaining a PhD. So.
Okay, good question, Natalie. Are there any other questions before we move forward? Okay, all right, awesome. Julio, yeah, you can move forward to the next slide, which is, it's a numbers game. So what are the application numbers? Oops, sorry.
Okay, yeah, so this is just this past year we had over 1,800 applications. Out of those, so we had 1,323 master's applications and 533 PhD applicants. We accepted 513 MS students and 69 PhD students. And out of those, right now, because of COVID, we've had a lot of students that are deferring admissions to next fall. So that's why our numbers are very low. Right now, we have a total of 153 master's students coming and 37 PhD students who are coming. Our numbers might decrease, but typically we have around 215 students coming. The numbers, as you can see, for PhD students, for the PhD applicants, is really low, so it's very competitive. One of the reasons is because we fund our students, so we don't admit any PhD students without faculty support and funding. So some programs, just so you guys can be careful. Some programs admit PhD students without funding. The thing to be careful about that is that you're going to be in this program for 5 to 7 years, and if you're not getting the financial support from the department, you're gonna have a hard time getting through the years, because I guess it does get pricey. And the good thing with our department is that we fund our students throughout the entire time, whether it's a fellowship or working as a graduate student researcher in one of our faculty labs, or as a TA. So PhD students will always have funding.
Thank you for clarifying that, Julio. And I want to remind students, for especially those of you who attended our Engineering Graduate Student Association panels. We had 2 of those this summer. You may recall that different departments do it differently, right? So there are some departments at Summer Engineering who do not fully fund all of their PhD students. So again, this is a unique factor that you as an applicant really need to find out how that specific school and that specific department do it. And so, I want to just clarify that Julio is saying very loud and clear that the electrical computer engineering department at Summerlee Engineering does fully fund all of their PhD students. But on the same token, not all of the master's level students are funded. Julio, there's a frequently asked question that comes up, and I want to just take the opportunity to ask it now, which is, can you talk about the different types of master's degrees that students can apply for? Because I know that some are research-based with a research thesis, and some are not research-based. So do you mind explaining some of the master's level options?
Yeah, so it's the same degree, but the students have 3 options to complete the degree. The default is the courses option, where students can complete 9 courses, 5 within the area that they are admitted to, and 4 in one of the other areas, or even other departments outside of engineering, outside of electrical and computer engineering, and a seminar. Our 3 areas of study are circuits and embedded systems, physical wave and electronics, and signals and systems. So whatever area you choose, you're going to take 5 courses in that area, and the other 4 can be from any of those other areas or from other departments. The good thing about our program is that students have a lot of flexibility, so you can choose whatever courses you are interested in. You don't have to follow a specific structure the way, for instance, as an undergrad, you have specific classes that you have to take, and then you have electives. Our program allows you to take any classes that you want. So that's a courses option. The other 2 options are a project option. You still take courses, but it's 8 courses only instead of 9, and you work on a project with a faculty member. And then the last option is a thesis option, where you come up with a research topic, and you do your thesis with a faculty member, but you still have to do courses. You do 7 instead of 9. So those are the 3 options that you can pick to to obtain your master's degree. By default, all entering students are placed in the courses option. And once you arrive, it's it's up to you to find a faculty member who wants to work with you on a project or a thesis, if that's what you're interested in. Most MS students just do the courses option because that's easier, and then most are just interested in going into work companies. But students who usually want to continue to academia or do a PhD are the ones who follow the project and or thesis option.
Or thesis option. Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that, Julio. I think that's an important distinction to make, especially for our students who, some of them through this research program have decided that research is really cool and they want to continue to do research. And so I know that that's a frequently asked question. Another note I want to make for our students is that UCLA does have like one of the top, if not, I think it's still #1, the top rated MS online program. And typically those are students who are still working full-time in industry, but they want to get their online master's degree. And so there is that MS online option. That is not run through the department, correct, Julio? That is run through the MS online office, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they're separate. They also have their own requirements for admission. I think they admit for both. They actually admit fall and spring. But something, Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think you were about to say it, that the professors are the same professors that are teaching either the in-person class on campus or the online class, if that's correct.
Yes. Good thing you bring the MS Online program, but something to note is that students in our program in the on-campus cannot take online courses to count towards a degree. Before you used to, but now the MS Online program, for some reason, they're not allowing our students to take online courses. Yes. In addition, you would have to pay a separate fee because the MS Online office is funded differently. I don't know what they get, but you would have to pay a separate fee in addition to the campus tuition fee that you pay.
Yes. And to the students, another point of clarification, as you heard from our industry tech talks, there are companies. So like if you're a full-time employee, the companies will pay, 50 up to 100% of your master's degree. And so, for some students, those extra fees that Julio is referring to for the convenience of taking a course online are irrelevant for some students because they know that their company is paying for that MS online degree as opposed to the student paying out of pocket for it. So that's another point of clarity. Before we transition to the application details and the different sections of the application, are there any questions about the logistics of applying and the numbers? Are there any questions for Julio? All right, I don't see any hands going up. So Julio, please proceed with the different sections of the application.
Okay, yes, so next section, we're gonna go over the all the components of the application. So this is what you'll see if you apply to UCLA. These are all the sections that you'll see on the application. Just something to keep in mind is that we share the system across the university. So, for instance, the film program uses this, English uses this. So a lot of the sections you might not be relevant to you. So you'll see things that may not apply. But if you just review the slides or if you go to our website, you'll see what you need to submit and what you don't have to worry about. But we'll cover this stuff right now. So demographics, which is pretty much, just your general information, your name, your contact information. Citizenship, this is just primarily it triggers language proficiency. If you guys, since you guys are doing, completing your bachelor's degree here in the U.S., you don't have to worry about this. This is mainly for students who are obtaining a degree for international students. And then our section, which is a plans for graduate study, where you'll select your major. So UCLA only allows you to pick one major, so you won't be able to select like computer science and electrical engineering, you'll only be able to pick one major. And then it will trigger a section with our particular questions where you'll be able to input preferred faculty, the area of study, and whether you want to complete a master's or PhD. And financial support, that's a section that the graduate division has just for, I guess, statistics purposes. They just want to see how many students, require, are asking for funding. But this doesn't, play a role on, on admission decisions. And because I know some students are concerned to say whether they want funding because they feel that, their chances of being admitted are going to decrease, but that's not the case. This is just for statistic purposes. Awards and publications. This is optional, but highly recommended. It's just where you can upload anything, any awards that you've completed, any like publications. If you published any work, you can, you can upload this as part of your application. Personal history statement. This is something that we don't require. It's the same as personal statement, what you submit, as an undergraduate, but we don't require this. I know some programs on campus, some other programs require this, but that's why you'll see the section, because like I said, we share the system with the entire university, so you can skip this section. You don't have to worry about submitting a personal history statement. The only essay document that we require is the statement of purpose. And then there's an employment section where you can upload your resume or curriculum vitae, or even you can even copy and paste that information. And the section where you upload your GRE scores and your TOEFL scores.
Quick question before we transition, Julio. Why are some of these highlighted yellow and some not highlighted yellow?
Yeah, so the ones that are highlighted yellow, those are the ones that that our department focuses on, that we focus on. But if they're optional, we don't require the students, because we know that students don't have all these, like not all students have done research, for instance, or published papers. So in order to be fair, we don't require our students to submit these documents. But but if you do have them, feel free to submit.
Yeah. And also you're going to be going over these important highlighted in yellow sections in a couple slides, correct? So you're going to go into more detail. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Letters to recommendation. This is a section where you'll upload all your recommenders, and they'll get an email, like an invite to submit. And the section where you can upload your CV and your resume. And then the research interest section where you'll upload your statement of purpose. And then another section, the final section, where you'll upload any other supplemental material. So anything that you want to share with our committee. It can be anything that you think will help you, but it's not required. So the application fee, it's $110. I believe it's 120 or 130 for international students. They always change the fee, but for domestic students, it's 110. If you are a student who receives need-based aid, financial aid from the government, the application fee can be waived, and you don't have to pay for the application. There's also a list of programs on the graduate division website that allow you to waive this fee. For instance, there's one if you're like a McNair scholar. Let me check. If you're like a Gates student, the graduate division has a huge list. So if you're part of any of these programs, you can apply for a fee waiver, and you don't have to pay the $110 for the application. Something just to highlight that section, and then just last, just whenever for any program, not just for our department, just make sure that you go through every section that you review your application and you uploaded all the correct documents, because after you submitted application, you won't be able to make any edits. So our highlighted section, so the plans for graduate study, like I said, this is our individual page on the application where you will note any preferred advisors. You can select up to 4 preferred advisors. For MS students, these are the faculty that we're going to try to match you with. So all of our MS students receive a faculty advisor. And then also for our PhD students, you can note anyone that you'd be interested in working with. We highly recommend that you look at our faculty on our website. So all of our faculty information and the research is on our website. So you can research, whichever faculty best meets your research interest. Because for PhD students, our faculty individually handpick each student.
Yeah, thank you
So
for
there's no.
I'm sorry, Julio. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's no committee for the PhD program. There's no admissions committee. It's each individual faculty will go through the applications and they will interview students and make an offer.
This is a very important distinction. Thank you, Julio, for making that. And I just want to stress this point to our Summer Undergraduate Research Program students. For this summer, you had no choice. You were placed into a lab, right? So it's not like you could go and shop and say, oh, I want to go in this lab, or I want to go in that lab. No, you were put into a lab, right? Applying for a PhD is very different. And I'm sure you remember this from our EGSA panels, our Graduate Student Association panels. It really is a one-on-one matching game. And each school is different, to Julio's point. Here in this ECE department, it is an individual one-to-one match where faculty go through the applications and select individually their students that they want. At other schools or in other departments, it's a committee that does it. And so there are some PhD programs that admit like a class of students, and then they let them kind of rotate and find out what lab they want to be in. And then they figure it out during that first year or that second year of the PhD program. And so that's another distinction you're going to want to compare and contrast when you decide what schools you want to apply to and what departments you want to apply to. That's one of the first questions you want to ask them is, how does your admissions work? Is it an individual one-on-one match, or is it a committee? And that's something important for all of you to know. So thank you, Julio, for pointing that out. Are there any questions from students before we move on to, any questions about plans for graduate study before we move on to the next highlighted section? Okay, no questions, great. So Julio, if you can please continue.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the faculty the PhD students, PhD applicants, the faculty member who admits you is going to be your advisor, and this is a person you're going to be working with for the duration of the time in the program. Something important or something you should know. So they're handpick you because they're the ones who are personally funding you, whether it's they're paying you out of their pocket, whether it's like a fellowship or graduate research or working in their lab. They're the ones that are paying you. Okay, so we went over the plans for graduate study. Next section, awards and publication. That's, like I said, it's not a required section, but it's a section that can that can be used to really showcase your work and experience. So any awards or anything that you publish, you can feel free to upload it here. It does not hurt, and it will show, especially for the PhD students, your research experience.
If you don't mind, if I'd like to add a couple points here in that, all of you students who are listening to this are part of this SURP program. You've been required, you've been paid to publish your research this summer. And this is a huge advantage for you when applying to a PhD or a research-based, thesis-based master's program. Because there are going to be inevitably some students who want to get a PhD or want to do a master's research thesis who never did undergraduate research. So this is a skill, this is an experience that you have that gives you a huge advantage. And like Julio said earlier, it's not required because it would be unfair to weed out students and not let them apply for a master's research-based master's or a PhD program without prior research experience. So they don't require, but I think I want to make the point that it is highly, highly recommended that if you have participated in a summer research program like ours, if you have published research, a poster at a conference, written an abstract, done an oral PowerPoint presentation, all of that are essential benefits that you have that make you more competitive for the PhD.
Yes, it helps for sure. Hey, Will, one question. Are all the students in this summer program, are they only UCLA students or are there students from other schools?
Great question, Julio. No, we do, overwhelming majority are UCLA undergrads. They just finished their first year in college, but we do have some non-UCLA students, mostly community college students who are either on their way to transfer to four-year universities or are, maybe a year away from applying and transferring.
Okay. Okay. Well, mainly, I mean, for the students that are already here at UCLA, so like I said, our admissions are made by our faculty. So you guys have you have the advantage that you've taken classes with these professors. So definitely go to office hours and be in touch with them because they're the ones that make the decisions. And ultimately it does make a difference when someone knows you. If that professor knows, like, oh, I know the student. They're a good student. They're smart. They participate in class. And then especially if you want to ask for a letter of recommendation, it's better. It's good that you guys are part of this program and that that you're get involved with your classes in the engineering department because like I said, because professors make the decisions. It's not for instance at the undergraduate level, I know they have committees from people all across campus, but for engineering for the graduate programs, it's the faculty members.
Excellent advice, Julio, and I think I've been trying to harp on that same point to students is that these relationships matter. I know we have a couple slides coming up that are talking about even if for the students who don't go to school here, or let's say they want to apply to Berkeley and they don't go to school at Berkeley, so you offer some great advice and tips on how to start forming those relationships even though you don't go to school there. So I'm sure you'll talk in more detail about that, but for now, I guess personal history statement, which is optional, but again, I think highly recommended.
Yeah, it's a personal history statement. Yeah, it is. It's optional. You don't have to submit it. It does, it does help, to let our faculty know, about your, personal experience. The difference between this and the statement of purpose is that the personal history statement is more personal, kind of like the personal statement that you guys wrote to come in as an undergraduate. So pretty much you talk about your personal background, what you're coming from, like struggles or any stuff like that. But it's optional. You guys can submit it or not.
I want to add a couple points there, Julio. Tomorrow night, students, we are going to have a workshop that starts at 6 o'clock that goes specifically into the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose. And Julio's going to briefly touch on these things today, but tomorrow you have a whole hour workshop from a graduate student and the Graduate Student Writing Center that's going to break these down. My advice to any student that has had any of these, experiences, right? Educational, familial, cultural, economic, anything that's impacted your academic journey, I highly recommend that you write a personal statement. If you feel like one of these factors has impacted your educational journey, because there are specific grants, there are specific fellowship, and there's extra money that is allotted to students who have had you know, these types of this type of impact on their educational journey. And so if you are underrepresented segment, so all female applicants are underrepresented in engineering, students of color, first generation going to college, low income students, you know, all of these are potential challenges and or opportunities that you've overcome and opportunities that are available. And so I do recommend, if one of these things applies to you, I do recommend that you write the personal statement, even though it is optional.
Yeah, just let me clarify. Yeah, because I guess it can be confusing, but yeah, so it's optional in terms for admission into our a graduate program. So you don't, for instance, if you don't submit one, it's not going to be like a deal breaker. But there are fellowships. There's a section for fellowships, which is what Will has just mentioned, where you can apply, and then you'll write this essay, and then you can become eligible for fellowships. Like there's one called the Graduate Opportunity Fellowship for master's students, where you can well, they fund you for those 2 years if you meet specific like diversity requirement. There's also like another fellowship for specifically for Jewish students. There's one for students who are interested in pursuing something in the biomedical, like if you're trying to do whatever, even if it's in electrical and computer engineering, if you're trying to go, if you're related to the medical field, there's a fellowship for that. And that's where that essay comes, plays a huge role. But what I wanted to clarify is that it's not a deal breaker if you don't submit it for admission into the electrical and computer engineering graduate program. But definitely do the essay if you plan to apply for the fellowships that are part of the graduate division.
Yeah, I just heard you say something, Julio, that I really want the students to make sure they caught that. And there are specific fundings, fellowships for this question here, which is how you might contribute to that chosen field. So like you mentioned, the bioengineering fellowship, right? And there are donors, so like there are people who graduate and they go on to illustrious careers and make a lot of money, and then they have philanthropy, right? They donate that money and they say, look, I want to give a $20,000 fellowship to a graduate student who is going to work in this specific field for this specific cause. So if you are motivated to pursue your PhD for a specific reason, then you should definitely include that, because there might be fellowships, money allotted for that kind of field. And I'm sure Julio will talk more about that when we get to the statement of purpose. So maybe we should move forward.
Okay, yeah. Employment section. Employment section. This is just. I think this is just a general section that, like I said, that the graduate division has on the application, where you just put any employment experience that you've had. For instance, if you part of clubs, or any paid, like if you had a job. This our faculty don't really look at it. What they look at is your resume and curriculum vitae, which is its own section. Letters of recommendation. That's a section where you'll input your recommenders information. So you can upload up to 4 letters. Like I said, we only require 3 letters. Highly recommend that 2 of those are academic references, and the third can be a professional reference. So the way it works, you'll input the recommenders information on this section, their name, their email address, and that person will get an invite for them to upload their letter through a separate page. And whenever they do that, you'll see at the end, once you submit an application, you'll have access to a status, like an application status check page, where you'll see if they have submitted the letter or not. Preferred skill. Okay, and then the next section is you see your resume and curriculum vitae. Just, any experience that you have related to your major, to electrical and computer engineering. This is, your opportunity to upload that. And our faculty want to see what you've done. So anything, if you've done any research, if you worked, for instance, if you have an internship, this is, your opportunity to list all that information. Okay, next is the statement of purpose. So what makes the statement of purpose different from the personal statement is that the statement of purpose is more of a professional essay. You don't talk about, your personal experience, like, I'm the first person to go to college. You can touch upon that kind of stuff, that kind of personal experience at the beginning, just introduce yourself. But the main point of the essay should be about your experience, your career goals, your academic goals, what you want to obtain out of the program, what you plan to do in the long run, stuff like that. Think of it almost like a cover letter kind of. So you list, this is your opportunity. If there's anyone in particular that you want to work with from our department, list their name, their names, and what attracts you about their work, or what specific research you want to do, and how UCLA, would help you in your academic goals, and how working for this lab, will help you, in your career in the long run. And I believe you said, Will, you're going to have a presentation that will go into much more detail tomorrow about the statement of purpose. Okay.
Yep. Yes, we will.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then the last section is the supplemental materials section. Again, this is another section that is optional, and it's, again, just for writing samples. Any other material that you want to share with our faculty that that will help you, are more than welcome to upload it here. So presentations.
Yeah, if it's okay, Julio, I really want to make a plug here. Students, You've worked so hard, you've stressed yourself out all summer long to produce this poster, to write this abstract, to publish in the research journal. Our research journal will be on our website forever, in perpetuity. So you can always link to our research journal to say, hey, I published in the Summer Undergraduate Research Program journal. And so all of these are samples. Your abstract, your poster, your oral PowerPoint presentation, you're all going to video record, right? You're going to get video recordings of your technical presentation lab. Like, all of that are work samples, are considered supplemental material. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you include this in any graduate school application that you submit, because these are work samples that you can demonstrate your proficiency for communicating research in either a visual poster, a oral kind of PowerPoint presentation, or a written abstract, or later on, maybe you write a paper and you have like a full-on, paper that you wrote, or a research report that you write for a 199 research course. So all of that is considered a supplemental material, writing samples. I highly, highly recommend you include those. Even though we're a lowly, summer undergraduate research program, it's not it's not Nature, it's not Science, it's not a peer-reviewed journal. It is something, and it's better than nothing.
Okay. Okay, and last, so very important, double check, triple check your application, because like I said, you won't be able to make changes after you submit the application. And it's very unfortunate because I do get a lot of students, who make mistakes like, oh, I uploaded the wrong statement of purpose, and, in order to be fair to everyone, and it's very difficult, because we have almost 2,000 applications to be able to make changes for everyone, it will take forever. So make sure, to double check your work before you submit your application. Like, go over all the sections, go over the documents, make sure that you uploaded the correct ones, that you didn't upload an essay that was meant to go to another university.
Awesome. Thank you, Julio. So those are the different sections of
Mhm.
the application. Students, do any of you have any questions about the different sections before we go into the actual factors that are impacting the decision? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. I don't see any
Mhm.
microphones being unmuted. So let's move forward, Julio. Let's talk about the factors
Oh,
impacting decisions.
okay. Mhm. Okay, so yeah, so primarily for our program, so the main factor is academics. So it is, it is a academic program. So we do, we put an emphasis a lot on your, GPA, your academic performance. It's still a holistic. We do a holistic review where we take everything into consideration. Yeah, your letters of recommendation, any experience that you have, your GRE scores, but we do put a lot more emphasis on your academics. So students with much higher GPAs, with higher academics, will have, um, you know, are going to be considered more competitive, compared to a student, for instance, that has, a 3.2 GPA. It does come down to academics because the faculty want to see that you'll be able to do the work because at the graduate level, the courses are a little more difficult and students do struggle. So we just want to make sure that you are able to, to handle the work. That's why, academics is a big factor when it comes to decision. Also, for PhD students, it all comes down, to our faculty and how you meet the research your research experience and needs because they, like I said, they make the decisions individually and they do conduct interviews um, for each student. So whatever, make sure um, you're very specific about your goals and what you want to do and that you're able to show it because they can tell if they interview you, they can tell right away if you're serious about obtaining a PhD or not.
Julio, can I add a couple of points to
Yeah.
what you're saying and just elaborate a little bit more? If you're again putting yourself in a faculty member's shoes, like I have to choose one or two graduate students that I can fund for this next fall. There's no way I have the time to read 533 applicants, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to apply filters, right? I'm going to say, Julio, I only want to see students with this GPA who listed me as the preferred faculty on the application. I want to make sure that their CV, their letters, and their research interests match the research that I'm doing in my research lab because I'm not going to take or waste my time reviewing an applicant who's not interested in the research that I'm doing. Like that's just a waste of my time. I'm too busy as a faculty member to be reading all of these applications, right? So the filters are what are going to sort and match students to specific labs. So if I'm a faculty member and I do very specific research, I do earthquake research, or I do research in concrete, then I'm going to look at the 533 applicants and create filters and say, who's interested in doing earthquake research? Okay, good. Those are the 5 applicants I want to review. I will take time out of my busy schedule to review the applicants who have a match to me as a preferred faculty and to the research interests that I'm doing in my research lab. So clearly, I think, you know, there's a strategy that you as an applicant can take here, right? In saying, in writing my application, in writing my statement of purpose, in filling out the preferred faculty, in my CV, I'm going to talk about this specific research area. And I think Julio can talk about this later, maybe even throw out a name or two of some faculty that you're interested in working with, because that is going to help the faculty sort which of the 533 applications they're going to take the time to review.
Okay. For all faculty, like I said, yeah, for PhD student, each faculty member has their own. They each have their own way as to how they make decisions. Um, like I said, if GPA is the most important one, and then after that, research experience, they look at your essay, and then they schedule interviews and letters of recommendation. Also, make your letters of recommendation are also very helpful because the fact whoever's especially for the PhD program, so you want someone that can really speak on on your behalf because I've seen letters where it's just like 3 sentences from students who from professors that just said like, oh, this student took my circuits one class and they passed with an A. So just make sure that you get uh, people that can really speak about your performance and about work that the quality of work that you can do.
Awesome. I like to add to that too. I've recommended to all of you students in last Friday's logistics meeting that you should be asking for a reference letter now, because your faculty member, or at the very least, your graduate student who you've worked with all summer long on your research project, they can write a good letter because they can speak to your work on a specific research project. So these are going to be the strongest letters of recommendation, is from somebody who's worked with you for 8-10 weeks in the summer on a specific research project. They can speak to your ability to solve problems. They can speak to your ability to quickly learn things independently, and they can speak to your ability to communicate research because they had to approve and sign off the consent form for your abstract and for your poster. So even though you might be 4 or 5 or 6 years or maybe even 10 years away from applying to a PhD, you want to ask for this reference letter now, so that it's documented while it's fresh in their head, while you can get a really strong, reference letter saying what you did. And then later on in 5 years or in 10 years, when you decide to apply to or go back to school, then you can send them that email saying, hey, here's the letter you wrote for me 5 years ago. Now I'm specifically applying to the ECE department PhD program at UCLA. Can you please tailor the letter to that department? And so I really want to just reiterate that point that you should be asking for reference letters for this summer. And the last point I want to make is that, like Julio said, this is a one-on-one matching game, right? And it's hard for you to predict or to know what that one specific faculty, how they weight these things. You don't know if that faculty cares. I've heard faculty say, look, I don't care about GPA. As long as they have research experience and they're interested in doing research in my lab, I could care less about the classes because I'm confident that they'll pass, the classes that are required. What I care really about is their research. I've heard other faculty say, no, my lab is very prestigious. If you don't have a 3.7 GPA, I don't want you. You're not good enough for my lab. It just varies from faculty to faculty. There's no way you could possibly know that in advance other than to talk to the graduate students that are currently working for that faculty member. And I think Julio's going to talk about that in a couple slides, but as a best tip or advice is the graduate students know their faculty member very, very well, and they know what the faculty member is looking for. So that is a great source for this type of information, right? Because you're probably not going to ask, have the initiative or be blunt enough to ask a faculty, so what's your number one criteria in selecting a graduate student? I mean, you might ask that and find a tactful way of asking that question. But, some people may be scared to ask the faculty member directly that question. But you could ask that question of the graduate student in the lab. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you honestly and brutally, honestly and bluntly what they think. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Sorry, Julio. I'm probably taking time away from your
That's fine.
presentation. So I should probably be quiet. So go ahead, Julio. Selecting students.
Okay, click the rest of the. Oh. Okay, yeah, like I said, so for MS for MS applicants, we do have a committee. Our 3 areas, we have 3 areas, and faculty from each area, they all meet and go look over all the admission for all the applications and then make the decisions. For, like I said, for PhD, each faculty member admits students individually, and then we get those recommendations and we forward them to the graduate division, and graduate division has a final say whether a student can be admitted or not. Like I said, obviously we're not going to make recommendations, of students who don't meet the graduate division requirements. So you don't have to worry about that. It's mainly, this only happens, for instance, if we have an international student who's, in their home country, they are, the top 1 student in their school, but their English language exam, like proficiency level, does not meet their requirements for admission. So the graduate division has, can, decline our recommendation, if they don't meet that requirement. But for domestic students, we don't foresee any problems. It's pretty much, just, meeting that 3.0 GPA and meeting the English requirement, which all domestic students, do, because you attend school here in the U.S. or if you're an international, if you come up from an Anglophone country like Canada, England, you don't have to worry about that. And then after that, they release, the official offer for you to accept and decline.
Question, Julio, has it been the case, and is it possible for a faculty advisor to go and basically appeal to the graduate division to say, look, I understand this student may not meet one of the qualifications, but I really want them, and I am very confident that they will be successful in my lab and in completion of the PhD program. I vouch for them. I will make sure they graduate. I'm funding their PhD. Please make an exception. Is that possible, and how often does that happen?
Yes, I've had one student each year, like every year the past 2 years. So yeah, these are students that, for instance, have a 2.9 GPA overall, and the faculty really, really want the student. And they do. There's it's called a DSA. Where faculty, do submit a document to the graduate division saying how the student, because we have to say why we want to admit the student over, students who meet our requirements. So this is where the faculty go into detail about this particular student's experience, any research experience. Typically, this only happens with students that the faculty personally know and have worked with in the past. So it is possible, but very rarely, and it's only in cases where the faculty knows you and you work with them.
Where there's a personal relationship between the faculty, and they really know the student and are willing to go to bat and vouch for them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Julio, for answering that.
Yeah, it always gets approved. The only time it doesn't get approved, and it's for students who don't meet the English requirement for international students, but other than that, if it's like an academic, like a GPA thing, it always gets approved as long as the faculty provides, the information as to,
Awesome. Students, we're wrapping up soon. This is the last section, the do's and don'ts. So we're almost done here. Are there any questions about those specific sections of the application, and basically how to make yourself stand out and be selected by a faculty member for the PhD? Are there any questions right now before Julio transitions to the do's and don'ts? Okay, Julio, looks like you can wrap up here with the last section, do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, so do make sure you always apply early. Don't wait until the last, the last month or the last 2 weeks before applying, because, there's always issues with the website or sometimes it gets, or like internet, like it crashes. So apply early, like start gathering all your documents, like preparing your curriculum vitae, your essay, your statement of purpose, so you can have someone review it. Ask, especially for your letters of recommendation, you want to start, you don't want to wait, too long for those. Start, think about the faculty or the people you want to reach out to and ask for a letter of recommendation, in advance. You don't want to give them, like 3 weeks, like even a month, like before. It's like, don't wait until like the end of November, to ask for a letter of recommendation, because this, even though they're not due until January 1st, we do go on to the holidays, for instance. And then for those of you who are interested in applying to the PhD program, definitely look, do your research and look at our faculty. All of our faculty contact information is on the website, so you can feel free to reach out to them before the application is due or it's open. Just be like, hey, I'm interested, I've been looking at your lab, I'm interested in the kind of work that you're doing. I would be interested in applying to your program. Are you taking any students this upcoming year? Can I forward you would you mind taking a look at my application? It doesn't hurt. Sometimes they don't reply because they're busy, but it's an option. And the good thing for those of you who are UCLA students, you can even go to their office hours, and then you can even you can ask them right there and then, and they have no way to ignore you. Like I said, don't wait until the last minute to ask letters of recommendation, and you make sure that you ask for people that can really speak on your behalf and your work. For the GRE, you don't have to worry about this year, but typically, make sure you sign up for the GRE in advance. It's like the SATs, that there's only so many. They administer the exam every so many weeks, and there's like a test center. A lot of students wait until December to do it, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm really scared about getting this course in." But this only applies if you planning to take a year or two off. Like I said, and don't be afraid to contact existing grad students or faculty, or even some of our faculty. The good thing about our grad students, they'll be able to tell you about their experience, about the kind of work that that the faculty demands. And then also email any questions. Our office is always is open. So right now we're closed, but you can always reach out to us via our message center, and we'll be able to help you out. As interest, all of our information is on the website. So before you reach out to us, try to see you can find the answer on the website, because we do get a lot of emails, and it's takes a lot of time. So we try to advise students to look at our website before emailing us, if it's like a general question, like like when is the application due or something, and the stuff that you can find on the website. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, you can contact the faculty. Their information is available on the website, or you can even go to their office. Bringing your resume, your CV, and talk about experience. Because like I said, at the graduate level, it's more professional. So think of it as if you're going to a job interview, because you are working for their lab and they're funding you. So how would you present yourself, for your employer? Think of it as that. How you're selling yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And they will,
go ahead, sorry.
when they ask you questions, they'll ask you academic questions, or stuff that they'll see how your thought process is. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you get the right answer to their question. That you just want to see your thought process.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make, Julio. In that and a lot of students think that they have to have prior research experience in that specific research lab topic or area, which is actually not true. It's definitely an advantage to have prior research experience, and an even better advantage to have prior research experience in their research area. But really what they care about is, are you interested in their research area? And that's where this final tip here, reading their papers, we talked about this in Journal Club at the beginning of the summer in the first couple journal clubs, how critical it is and what an essential skill it is to be able to read a journal paper, decipher it, and understand it. So reading the journal papers that have been published out of that research lab, and the last 3 publications for that faculty member are critical, because that becomes your interview material, right? When they start asking, like Julio says, what you think about the topic, and they start asking you questions, if you've read the paper, then you have ideas, right? You already have some formulated ideas of what the research is about. And then hopefully you have some really good questions that are going to push and challenge the work that they've already published. And there, some curiosity questions that you're going to say, well, I was thinking about this, and then that is going to leave a very good impression on any faculty member who is interviewing you for a PhD slot in their lab. So obviously this whole process, at least in this department, is faculty dependent. It is a one-on-one matching game. And so you need to make sure that, you make some sort of connection with the faculty. And 9 times out of 10, if I'm a faculty member and I'm investing, $250,000 of funding to this PhD student to come work for me for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I'm going to interview them, right? I'm not just going to blindly say, all right, here you go. Here's $250,000. And then it doesn't pan out, right? Like, I'm not going to take that risk. I want to make a connection with the 1 or 2 students that I'm going to admit into my research lab for that coming fall. So, again, put yourself in their shoes and be prepared. Like Julio says, it is a job interview. Be prepared to interview with them, and make the best impression that you can to convince them to take you and fund you for the next, 4, 5, 6, 7 years of your PhD. Thanks, Julio, for letting me jump in there.
Yeah. Wow.
Contacting grad students.
Again, this is pretty much like what we've gone over, but these are like for PhD students or your TAs. These are your allies. So definitely, go to their office hours. You can even go to the labs. The labs are open to anyone, so you can even go and check out the labs and ask, each student, like the students that are there, they're always there. The PhD students are always there. Some of them are always like even late at night working in the labs. You can ask about their experience and what's so and so what Professor so and so looks for the students. But definitely, your TAs is the starting points, because the TAs are PhD students in our program right now who are who have gone through the process. So definitely, if you're interested in applying, definitely, talk to those students, to the TAs, and they will tell you about what helped them, and what they would have done differently, and or what to do during your first year and stuff like that. So definitely go to office hours.
Great advice, Julio. Great advice. I also want to reiterate what some of our graduate students said on our Engineering Graduate Student Association panel, our EGSA panels. They talked a lot about this, right? They talked about what is the lab culture? What is the mentorship style? Because, a lot of students are so desperate to get accepted into a PhD that, they feel like they're being interviewed. But they never flip the coin and say, well, wait a minute, I should also be interviewing this lab. I should be interviewing this, this faculty advisor, because I have to make sure it's a good fit for me, right? I don't want to join a lab and then not enjoy it, right? Or have a conflict with the mentorship style, or, have a conflict with the lab culture. You're going to spend a significant amount of time as a PhD student, at least 4, 5, 6 years in that lab. You want to make sure it's a good fit for you. So you should also be interviewing them. And, sometimes, it takes a lot of courage to ask those types of direct questions to a faculty advisor directly. but it's a lot easier. Like Julio said, these students, these graduate students are your allies. They're students just like you. They're just a little bit older. So they're going to be able to tell you the truth, right? They're going to be able to tell you exactly what the deal is in a more comfortable environment, in a less intimidating environment. So I do personally recommend you, and I think the graduate students on the panel recommended you to go ahead and talk to the graduate students to get the real lowdown, the real scoop on how the lab works, and so that you can decide if it's a good fit for you or not. I think that pretty much wraps it up, right, Julio? I think the last thing you were going to talk about is the FAQs on the website. So I think this wraps it up. Julio is here probably for another 5 minutes. So if you have any questions for Julio, this is kind of your last chance to ask him. So please write your question in the chat or unmute your mic. This is your last chance to ask Julio any questions before he takes off.